There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I've got to beat every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up using a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. I had fun playing Dark Cloud 2, but I knew that in my quest to beat 4,218 games on the PS2, I'd finally run into a game that tried to do too much. And honestly, I realized this when the help menu contained fully voiced videos showing and explaining all of the mechanics involved in the game, even if they weren't necessary to see the credits. This is definitely a great example of jack of all trades, master of none, although it does get kind of close in some areas, like the combat. It's actually pretty good, but some of them are just too much. There's no reason to have this many things to do in your game, and at least things that constantly pop up and take up lots and lots of your time. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself though, so let's start at the beginning. Once we start the game, we see a young woman running from some people who look like knights down a hallway in what we assume is a castle, and then we fight them, and we get these little tutorial buttons showing us what we can do in combat. They aren't hard, but whatever. This game is a third-person action combat game where, yes, it's slightly RPG-ish, but the characters don't themselves level up. It's just your weapons that level up. So you do gain experience, but it's for your weapons specifically. We quickly transition to another character, and his name is Max, short for Maximilian. Not your typical hero, who begins as an orphan. Hell no, this kid is fucking loaded. He lives in the largest house in Palm Brinks, and has enough staff to fight the entirety of the game for him, and run the world once it's been saved. But don't worry, he's relatable. His mom is a deadbeat, and he likes to get his hands dirty by inventing things. And he doesn't wear the frilly attire you'd expect some rich person to wear unless you dress him that way, because at the beginning of the game you get to choose a little bit of his outfit, which is, fun, I guess. He invents things with his grungy old friend Cedric, not his dad, who's totally in the guns, by the way, and plays almost no part in the story, but this random old dude. After we get to see his privileged home life, Max tries to go to the circus and has his precious ticket stolen by this little homeless child. Not able to part with any of his millions, Max hunts the kid down to get the ticket back, but feels bad when he sees how excited the child is to finally see the circus. But the child was a test. You see, Max wears a stone around his neck that is really important and needs to be trusted to keep it, so that's why he was tested. Not that he cares though, so he takes back the ticket and seals his fate by going to the circus. Once there, one member of the insane clown posse is looking for this stone around Max's neck, and once he realizes Max has it, decides it's time to assault a child. Max escapes into the sewers, and we enter our first dungeon. As we progress through the game, the dungeons drive one part of the pacing of the game. Each dungeon is generated randomly and needs a key to leave. A random enemy, sometimes I think you might be able to tell who it is, but not always, usually holds the key, and the only real requirement to leave the dungeon is to just find the key and hit the exit. Scattered throughout the dungeons though are many different enemies, each could be holding the key, treasure chests, objects to break, and all the items you could ever want. Now, your character doesn't level up like I said, but your weapons do. When an enemy is killed, they drop blue crystals that when picked up give the specific weapon that dealt the killing blow experience. However, that's not always the case. If you kill something with your main weapon, it does get experience once you pick those crystals up. But let's say you kill it and switch to another character. Well, the experience is distributed between both of your weapons instead of just the one, and it is evenly distributed. So you can kind of pick and choose who gets the experience, what gets the experience, and how much experience it gets. As they gain experience, you can level those weapons up into new versions of weapons, but I'll talk about those later. Max dredges through the sewers, gathering items and gaining experience while trying to escape from the clown posse. As we do, it's revealed that Palm Brinks, the city we start in, is the last habitable place on the earth in the world. I don't really know. For the last 15 years or so, I'm not sure. It's the same amount of time that Max has been alive, which is a little suspicious. Eventually, the clown finds us and sends an elephant to kill us. We can't damage it, but Cedric comes in with what looks like a mech, a wooden mech, and saves us. So our next mechanic is the ride pod. So we have the dungeon crawling, the weapon experience, and now a ride pod, which is a mech suit. And it has its own experience, has its own arsenal of weapons, armor, and different kinds of movement. So it's pretty hefty. It's not just some little extra thing. You get to design this thing and make it do what you want it to do. And there's quite a bit you can do with it. Something I skimmed over a little bit before was combat. And combat is its own mechanic, obviously. So when you're in a dungeon and you're fighting enemies, combat goes just like this. You can attack, you can move around, you can lock on, you can block, and you have two different weapons. Your main hand weapon and a secondary weapon. For Max, that's his gun. If you hold the L1 aim button, you can aim the gun and press the attack button to fire the gun instead of swinging your wrench. There are also 3 item slots each character can use. Pressing the square button will use them in the dungeon and in the middle of combat. These items can heal your health, they can be support items like a camera, or you can throw things and deal damage to enemies. At any time during combat, you can go into your menu and either heal or equip a different weapon, use an item, whatever you want to do. It's pretty much immediate. In this game, there isn't really a good way to avoid damage except for strafing around an enemy when you know that they're going to use an attack you can dodge, pulling back from an enemy who's going to use a wide area of attack, or blocking. Blocking doesn't always block all damage. It does block most of it, and sometimes you can block 100% of the damage an enemy does, but sometimes damage will get through, something like chip damage from a fighting game. So the idea is to move around during combat to dodge attacks or block, and then use your attack button to do combos. Each combo a weapon does is a little different. Some weapons do fast combos, slow combos, there are more hits in a combo, and when you're doing them, usually, depending on the enemy type, you can stagger an enemy. That way you can get some damage off. Sometimes you knock the enemy down and they have to get up, and you can also charge your main attack. Holding down the X button will charge it, and when you let it go, it will usually knock the enemy off their feet immediately, meaning that you can charge an attack, let it go, charge it while they're on the ground, and let it go again to continuously knock them down. This doesn't work for every enemy. Some enemies are too big, some just don't get knocked down. It all depends, so you just gotta figure it out as you go. When using the ride pod, just like the weapons, anytime you kill something in a dungeon with it or give it experience from killing it with something else, you get experience and a little bar at the top, and it's just a solid number. It doesn't do anything other than buy you parts. The main part that you want though are cores. Every time you buy a new core, it will upgrade the capacity of the ride pod, meaning that you can equip more powerful gear on it. Every time you buy one, the next one will appear, and you'll just have to keep getting experience and buying them. So it doesn't cost money, it just costs experience, which means that now you've got something else to think about when you are gaining experience. You can equip this thing with like 4 or 5 different types of weapons, a Gatling gun, missiles, lasers. You can also put treads on the bottom of it, you can put skates, you can put a motorbike on the bottom, you can add armor to it, you can give it samurai swords. There's tons of stuff to do with this thing, and honestly, I don't know why they had this also in here. There's just a lot to do in combat. As we continue on the surface, Cedric and the mayor of Palm Brinks talk about fixing the train that will travel the world so that we can actually leave the village, as no one here has left in 15 years. So a lot of people are pretty suspicious about the rest of the world out there, and honestly, I am too. I don't understand what the fuck is going on. For 15 years, the world's been destroyed except for this one town, and we're having a circus and some kids in the sewers? What's going on? When you get to the end of a dungeon, and sometimes in the middle, you'll fight a boss. This boss happens to be the clown and this crazy spider clown mechanical thing that shoots its nose off. Something you can do in the game is pick objects up and throw them, like stones or even enemies. Well, the clown pulls its nose off and shoots it at you. If you pick it up and throw it at it, it will fall down and then you can deal damage. He's not a difficult boss, and to be honest, throwing things isn't really as helpful as you would think. If you pick up a rock and throw it at an enemy, it will daze it. This is something special that only the rocks and maybe a few other things can do to an enemy. When it's dazed, it can't attack, and usually it even lasts longer than when they fall on the ground, meaning that you can probably kill an enemy without it even attacking if you can pick a rock up and hit it before the enemy moves out of the way or attacks. Although it is a little difficult to aim these things, so it's not something I use very often. You can also pick up enemies, although I never really found a great use, I suppose. I mean, some enemies can't be picked up because they're too big, so I just really kind of ignored it. Max escapes the sewers just in time for the train to be reopened, and they come get him, so he didn't really have to go through the sewers in the first place. In fact, they could have just told him. I mean, you come out of the sewers to talk to Cedric, and actually there's another mechanic here that I haven't explained yet. During your travels in the sewers, you have to learn how to invent things. You get a camera, and you get a new menu where you can invent things that you take pictures of, and it's pretty ridiculous. You have a camera and you take pictures of all the things in the world. You take pictures of barrels and lights and books and jars and special items that you can find in the environment, and anytime you take a picture, it will light up with a light bulb showing that it is a new invention item that you can use in the menu. Once you go into the menu, you can take all of the pictures that are important and put them in your book. You then go to the book and you take 3 pictures total and put them into your little invention thing above Max's head here. If those 3 things work together as an item, he will think up an invention for them. Now, sometimes you can find those lists out in the world. It'll say, Max has an idea for an invention, and then list 3 or 4 items you can put into the invention list. That way you can at least have some idea of some of the things you can invent. The problem here is that not everything is shown, and you can pretty much invent anything in the game, and there are so many items to find. It's crazy. I don't even know how you would find them without just sitting down and taking pictures of everything and slowly putting everything into the invention list and hoping one day you have a full list yourself. I don't know. I use a guide sometimes because how am I supposed to know all of these things if the game doesn't tell me? Here's the thing though, the only time the inventions are absolutely necessary is when you are inventing for the ride pod for the very first time. After that, you don't absolutely need to use it again. You can find most of those items out in the world just later on. You can invent some of them early, but you can't always use them. So it is extremely helpful and cool and really fleshed out for something that is not at all necessary. Okay, we've got several mechanics here under our belt in the first like 3 or 4 hours of the game. So let's move on. The next thing that we're going to do is ride the train through a forest. And as we do this, the clown comes up on the train with a car and a dude driving it and a Gatling gun. You've got to throw bombs. Now this is the one other time that this mechanic actually shows up, and it's easy-ish. The game helps you auto-aim these bombs. You throw the bombs and hit the clown, and when he finally gets knocked off, he comes up on top of the train. And then this weird scene plays out where he literally straps dynamite to himself and threatens to blow everyone up. I don't know why, but this is what he does. However, before he does, he turns around and there's that homeless child who stole our ticket from earlier. But it turns out from last time we learned that this was a test, to see if Max was a nice person and deserved to keep the stone around his neck. It turns out to be the girl from the beginning of the game. I really don't know why she did that or what's going on or why she decided that was how she was going to do things, but that's what she does. And then she comes up and just destroys the clown. I presume that he's dead because we never see him again after this, but she chops his ass up and kicks him off the train. This woman's name is Monica, and when the train finally gets stopped by some random rocks on top of the train tracks in the middle of this forest, she gets down and explains another mechanic to us. Yes, another thing in the game. Time travel. That's right, time travel. Past, present, and future. We are in what they consider to be the present, and she is from the future. She's come back because this guy, Griffin, the one who destroyed the world 15 years ago except for Palm Brinks because he's looking for the stone around my neck, has also screwed up the future. See, Monica is from the future, and she's come back to fix things in the future. I don't know how she remembers how things work if they're destroyed, but whatever. You know what? It's fine. So she says everything in the future has an origin point, back in my time. What we have to do is fix things in the present so that the future will also be fixed, which I suppose makes sense. How does she know though? I have no friggin' clue because it would have already happened, so she would never have known these things to exist, but fuck it, this is how the game is working. So we have to spend our time here in the present fixing the world that Griffin destroyed so that the future will hold the answers to how to defeat Griffin for us, I guess. I don't know. So we are going to be traveling through time many different times during the game so that we can access new things that we've saved in the future. You are fucking not going to believe this, but there are still mechanics to be revealed. I swear to God, we've just learned in the first 5 hours of the game, like 10 different things you got to do. These are all things that just take up your time, which is fine. I understand. I'm not saying that this is a bad game by any means, but god damn, how much are we going to have to do in this game to beat it? Anyway, now we have to figure out a way to leave the forest, but we also need to figure out how to fix the future from our time here. So we head into the forest and we find these little guys named furbits. They pretty much look like gnomes or dwarves of some sort. They're just some variation on them. But these guys, there are very few left, and they are known builders, and we realize that we might have to save them so that we can get what we need to get done in the future. They say, hey, half of the people who live here, the furbits, the 7 of us, have gone off to find this woman who came here. She seemed to be a human, and she was very nice to us. For some reason, we fell under this weird spell with her, and we loved her, and she stayed here for a while, but then one day she just up and left. 4 of us went looking for her and never came back. Can you help us? Now is when the real game loop takes effect. Every time we get to a new area, we learn a little bit of story and the reason behind why we need to go into the dungeon. We do about half of the dungeon, and then we need to do some kind of other activity. Then we finish the other half of the dungeon and fight the boss at the end and figure out how we need to fix the future. This is pretty much going to happen the next 6 times that we do dungeons throughout the game. Each area will have this exact same setup. During the first several areas of this dungeon, we learn another mechanic. That's right, we learn how to build up our weapon. Monica teaches us how we build up our weapon into a new version that has new abilities and looks a little different, probably more attack, everything like that. And here's how to do it. In your menu, you can spectrumize any item in the game, almost. So there's a few that you can't. But if you click on it, you can see the spectrumize option. When you spectrumize it, it turns into a small see-through item in your menu that you can then put onto the weapon. When you spectrumize an item, it will tell you what stats it will give to the weapon. And there are many different stats, as you can see down here. One of them including attack, one of them including durability, lots of different status types like wind and fire and water, and also smash and beast. There's lots of different things that affect enemies and resistances and weaknesses in the game. When you go to the build up menu for the weapon, you'll see question marks, and then you'll also see all of the stats that you need to increase to get it to build up to this new weapon. That means you must spectrumize and level up the weapon to slowly gain those points. When you get enough points on a weapon in a certain stat for it to be built up, it will stop glowing blue. You'll have to do this with each of the stats though, because they are all important. And sometimes you actually have multiple build up trees that you can go up. This lets you pick and choose sometimes what your weapon or secondary weapon will be built up into. Each build up comes with its own stats, its own combos, and its own weapon attack speeds. You won't know what they'll be until you do it though, which is a problem I will talk about later. But for now, when you build them up, you will learn about all the new things that that weapon can do as you wield it. And for Max, you can use wrenches and hammers, and for Monica, you can use shorter swords and longer swords. Building up is essential to beating the game. Honestly, only building up your main weapon is probably the most important thing, but you can build up your secondary weapon and use it. I never found it to be as useful, so if you want to focus on one thing, only build up each character's main weapon and the ride pod, because those are the most important things in the game. But you will have to do it, because eventually the damage of your weapons will fall off and you won't be able to kill enemies quick enough, especially when they are resistant to some of the damage types on a specific weapon. You'll be switching back and forth between Monica and Max to deal the appropriate amount of damage to enemies to make it through, including the ride pod too. Don't worry, this isn't the only thing you learn about. In fact, the next thing you learn is that there are things in dungeons called seals. On each individual dungeon level, there can be a red, a blue, or a white seal. It's not always the case, but sometimes it is. These seals will lock out specific things from happening. Red and blue will lock Monica or Max out from being in that dungeon at all, meaning you can't switch to one of them. You'll be stuck using only one of them. The white seal stops you from healing and curing status ailments entirely, unless you find a very specific thing in the dungeon that will automatically do it for you, and it's pretty much a one-time use. So these seals are difficult because each one stops you from using a full-on character or even healing, making it more difficult. There is a way to break the seal. There's two actually. One, you can find an item in Palm Brinks at the general store that breaks a seal for 1,500 gold. Early on, this isn't very helpful because you don't have that much gold and you use it for a lot of things. Later on, you'll be buying several of them so you never have to worry about the seals again. The other way is to destroy every enemy in the dungeon. The problem is that it doesn't help you going through that dungeon. You still have to deal with the seal. If you want to go back to that dungeon to level up, to get new things, that seal will be gone if you defeat all the enemies. It's really only helpful the second time you go through, and honestly, I only went through a dungeon once. Finally, around halfway through, we get to a special level that we walk around in for a while, and we actually do a couple things. The first thing is we find the other 4 furbits that were missing. However, 3 of them have kind of lost their minds, and they're just staying there no matter what anyone says to them. They won't leave. And one of them is fishing and won't leave without his friends, of course. He's not insane, but if we travel deeper into this level, we find Master Utan, who is just kind of like a resident of the forest. I don't know what he does, but he also has a really weird voice. He sounds kind of like a hippie. And he tells us the Holy One can help us, and he is a giant fish. The way to get him is to use a poison apple as bait on a fishing rod and pull him out of the water to talk to him. That means we have to go fucking fishing. The fishing minigame isn't necessarily hard, but we only really need to use it a few times during the game, or at least I do. I'm sure there's other reasons to use it, but it really didn't seem useful to me. We must catch one more fish for the fish god himself. That way he can, I don't know, get his scales cleaned by this little fish. But he does release the 3 furbits who are insane. We're not really sure if it's him that did it, but most likely it was. Now that the furbits are free, we head back to their house and they talk about Holly, the woman who they were enamored with before, and they just can't find her. The only way for them to really find her now that they're all together is to help us. So we need to learn how to build. We have another huge mechanic, and this one is extremely important to the rest of the game. It's the only way to complete the rest of the game. This is kind of now what you'll be doing. You will be building towns. There are about 6 towns in the game, including a 7th that's not actually a town, it's just a garden. But each of these you have a large area. It is themed, and there are a couple caveats. Some of them have smaller areas. One of them actually has you balancing things on these plateaus. What you do is you get in this machine and you build pieces of this town, like houses, trees, amenities, just like things in this village. And in the houses, you can place real people. We won't do this right away. We'll have to wait a minute before we get our first person. But we learn how to build these things and put the materials together. The materials are something that you get in the dungeons, and eventually, very shortly here, the main furbit will sell you pretty much everything you need to build at all times. And this is actually what you're going to do most of the time, is buy things with money, because you would need a ton of grinding to get the materials without buying them. Generally, I spent a lot of money, but this is mostly the only thing I spent money on anyway. I usually found things or invented them myself, so I didn't have to spend a lot of money. This is now the way that you will affect the future. You need to build things specifically and add people specifically to each of these areas so that the future will hold the thing that actually can help defeat Emperor Griffin. Each individual town will have its own chart that will show you what you need so that it can be up to 100% completed, so that the future is the perfect version of what you need. And anytime you want, you can go to this special light in the side of the town and go back and forth between the future and the past. That way you can see any new things you've unlocked. And this is really important because just on top of this, you've got a lot of things in the future to look forward to. The future is the only place that holds HP and defense upgrades for Max and Monica specifically. If you get these items from these small treasure chests hidden around the future, they will increase your health and increase your defense. And they are absolutely necessary because eventually enemies can one-shot you if you refuse to go find these fruits of Eden, which will increase their health. Not only that, but every time you build things in the past and unlock new things in the future, there will be new shops and new things to visit, and sometimes this is what activates quests. You'll find yourself getting to a certain percentage of a town being done so that the future can be affected, and you'll get story beats once you go to the future and check it out. Okay, there's still a little bit more. After we learn how to build, we aren't really able to build very much. So we go back to the level where Master Utan helped us free the furbits from their mind control, and he actually opens up the next area of the dungeon. Most of the time you can't progress any more than halfway because there's something you need to do to unlock a story beat. Now that we got access to the second half of the dungeon, we are going to start finding Geostones. Geostones are hidden around, one per level in the dungeon, and you'll find them some kind of random place, and they'll be marked very specifically with a purple dot. It looks different than anything else. When you find it, when you go back to building, it will unlock new things to build. This is the only way to get all of the things you need to build and make the future what you need it to be so that you can move on with the game. So you need to collect every single Geostone. Well, I'm sure there's a few you don't need to, but how would you know? Each one unlocks a different amount of things, and unless you already know, you might as well grab all of them, especially because you get so many benefits from making sure you build as much as you can in each city. So you don't have to make every one 100%. You can make it about 50 to 60 to 70%, and the game will continue. But if you do 100% a town and make it perfect in the future, sometimes you get items. So it's never a bad idea to just collect all the Geostones. Once you've begun to collect Geostones, before you get to the boss, you'll need to use them to build things in the village to construct stuff in the future. And one of the things you have to actually do is get someone from Palm Brinks to come live in town. His name is Gordon, and he's actually the gardener at our own house, which is pretty funny. You'll spend most of the time coming back to Palm Brinks to get people to come live in these places you've built up. But the place you get them most from is your own house. You have the biggest house in fucking town. Everyone who's employed at your house, you eventually just bring them over. You bring everyone over, and you bring your own fucking dad. Everyone is out of the house. It's just some random people looking after your house, and none of the owners are there. No one's there. So you just take everyone, just bring them all out. Just have them help you rebuild the world. Although we come to another small mechanic. It's still a mechanic though. When you recruit people to come help you rebuild the world, they also can be inside of your character menu. If you go to the character menu, you can see them, and they actually have abilities. And everyone has a slightly different ability. Some of them are actually meaningful. Some of them are pretty mundane. Ones that you would probably never use. Like, one person lets you escape a dungeon so you don't have to complete it if there's no way for you to get out. You can just hit the button and she'll take you all the way out. Or there's someone like Cedric who literally heals your weapons and your ride pod because he's in your inventory. Yeah, you do have to put him back into town to regenerate his ability. So you can't carry him around forever, but he is a kind of get out of jail free card if one of your weapons breaks or if the ride pod breaks. Once we fulfill a few of the conditions for the future to change, we head there for the very first time and we meet Lord Jurak, who is an enormous tree and his big old nostrils stick out while he talks to you. Well, he talks very slowly and he tries to remember anything about the past. And we ask him about this rainbow butterfly that has been spotted in the forest, although it's supposed to be some kind of legend. But we believe it may be real. We think it might actually be the reason that the woman left the furbits. Lord Jurak can't remember anything, and he tells us that we probably need to fix more of the future before we can figure things out. We do just that, and when we come back, he finally remembers the butterfly, and he says that the only way to see the butterfly is to have a very special flower open up that it feeds from. And you have to take this La Fresca seed, and you have to use a sun drop to make it grow quickly. Well, we get to do another new mechanic. That's right, there's another fucking mechanic. See, Max is the only one that can use the ride pod. So when you switch to using Monica, she can't do anything else. She doesn't use the ride pod. But now you can transform her into a monster. When you've transformed into this monster, you then talk to another similar one in a dungeon and he'll give you the sun drop. This is really just a tutorial to show you how to change into a monster. It's not necessarily something you'll be doing a lot more. In fact, I don't use it anymore throughout the entire game. I just completely ignore it. I get no more monster transformations. It's already too fucking much and I already have so much to worry about. I just don't want to worry about the monsters. I also hear that they're not great. So if you look online in a guide, you might find that a lot of people say, if you can, if you want to forget something, forget the monster transformations. That might just be something you do. To find the monster to get the sun drop, I kind of have to go to a random part of the dungeon. See, each dungeon has a lot of different enemies, and no two dungeons have the exact same set of enemies, at least that I've seen, even just one difference. So every time you go through one of the levels in the dungeon, you'll find slightly different enemies, which is cool admittedly, but for this part, I don't remember where this guy is, and there's no way to tell. So if I used a guide, I could, but I just had to keep going back to dungeons until I found the one enemy I needed. And then you talk to him, get the sun drop, and then I kill him. Heading back to the area labeled boss allows me to plant the La Fresca seed and then use the sun drop to make it grow very quickly. Well, after it does, it blooms, and we actually see the rainbow butterfly come to the flower. So we go up to the flower and we get a boss fight. That's right, our first real boss fight when we're left alone after the tutorial. Although we keep getting new mechanics. There's still some new mechanics on the way. Just don't worry, we're gonna get some new stuff. But the butterfly is a weird boss fight. It's not like your normal boss fight in this game. So what you do is you're running around on top of this big flower. You hit these stems kind of curl down from the middle, and as you hit them, it eventually releases stuff that hits the butterfly. You don't fight the butterfly at this point. You just hit these. It then splits the butterfly, because it's a rainbow butterfly, into 7 different butterflies. And those butterflies represent the different colors of the rainbow. You need to sneak up behind them, hit them in the order that they are in the rainbow. And then that's it. The boss's battle is over. And during the boss battle, you actually get these big, long text boxes to come up that tell you exactly what to do, which I thought at first was a little weird. Like, the second you mess up or when you come up to something new, it just comes up with this big old blurb of, here's what you have to do, look for this, maybe this gives you a clue. And it's like, bro, this isn't a clue, this is just telling me what to do. So it's fine, I just thought it was weird that it tried so hard. Maybe if they thought you were gonna have an issue doing this. I mean, it is weird, it's completely different than everything we've done. Even the clown fight, you threw a nose and then still attacked. This is much more about like a puzzle, figuring it out. So other than that, it's easy. You don't really get hit very often if you hit the stems, and you just sneak up behind the butterflies and hit them. Once we win the boss battle, we find out that the butterfly is actually the woman that stayed with the furbits. That's right, the butterfly turned into a human to repay the furbits for their kindness when she was a young butterfly, and they saved her instead of hurting her. So she decided, well, I'll live with them as a human and I'll take care of them, but it was too gray, it was too much, too precious for her, so she realized that's not what she wanted. I'm not really sure why exactly, maybe because she's like a rainbow butterfly god, but then Emperor Griffin comes in and makes her evil, so that kind of is why she disappeared in the first place. She wasn't gonna leave them with nothing, but, well, she turned evil. So now that she's away from them and she's back to being normal, she realizes there's no way she can go back to them, so she gives me a letter and says, take it to him and everything will be fine. And it's like, okay, all right, sorry, furbits. Saving the rainbow butterfly helps Jurak remember more about Emperor Griffin, although he doesn't quite remember enough. He says, I don't know how far away he is in the past, but he is quite far, so you need to do something else to figure it out. And there's this sage called Crest. You need to get her and figure out what she has to say about Emperor Griffin. Otherwise, you'll never know where you need to go to get him. Just as this development happens, they also clear the rocks from the train tracks so that you can use the train to go to the next area, which is Balance Valley. When we arrive, we find a young woman in a hut with an owl, and the young woman is bedridden from shock at seeing her master, who is a mage, die, which doesn't make any sense because how could you be that bedridden from the shock of someone dying? So I'm a little skeptical. The owl says before we do anything else, you've got to find a doctor and see what they can say about her condition. We go back to Palm Brinks and steal the one and only doctor Palm Brinks has, bring him here, and he says, oh no, it's not shock. She walked into some toxic mist somewhere and is now suffering from the effects of toxic mist, and there's no way to cure her that we know of. Which, see, I knew it wasn't fucking shock. Anyway, the characters arrive at the decision that in the future, Monica says there was a chef who made a miracle dish. That miracle dish apparently can heal you from anything, which more skepticism for me, but whatever. So our new goal is to build up this area until we can get the future to have that chef be alive, and then we go to him and try and get him to cook this dish. To begin this area, I have to go through the dungeons and get at least halfway through before I'm allowed to have enough stuff to build up for the future to have this chef. As I go through the dungeons, I start to learn a little bit more about the combat. See, if you hold a direction and then attack, sometimes you'll do a jumping attack, which isn't always what you want to do. In fact, it usually messes me up. There are very few times I want to actually jump attack. So you're gonna have to let the stick go neutral, or your analog stick go neutral, and then attack before you hit an enemy, because otherwise you're gonna jump at them, and a lot of times that jumping attack won't stagger them. So this is on top of learning how to fight each of the enemies. And this stage has a lot of different enemies, some with shields, many enemies have projectiles, a lot of the enemies are fast, and then you also have a lot of large enemies that really can only be killed quickly enough by Max's ride pod. Yes, you can fight these large enemies as long as you have enough time and patience to fight them with just the characters Monica and Max, but I'll be honest with you, using the ride pod is really the best way to be killing these big enemies. All the enemies, like I said, have a ranged attack. You're gonna have to learn what enemies use ranged attacks and melee attacks and at what distance they use them. You're pretty much just gonna have to approach every enemy blocking and hoping that you can figure it out before they either chip damage you to death or poison you, and then move to their backside and start attacking and stagger them and kill them. Once I get halfway through the dungeon levels, I get to a spot where they say we can't go any further until we help Lynn, the young girl who is toxic misted in that little cabin. So I come back and I've collected all the geostones from each of the dungeon levels. I use those to begin building things. I look in the analytics and tells me what I need to do to get things in the future to show up. Some of those things are going back and getting people from Palm Brinks, like I've said before. When you do go get people, the way to tell who is who, because you don't always know a character's name, is to bring out your camera and take a picture of them. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see their name appear. That way you at least know you're about to get someone who's important, because sometimes people actually aren't ever important. They're just people you can move in for extra culture points. As you build up things in the town, you will gain culture points, and it's just a way to show that you've built things in a specific way. So you can add things, add houses, add people, and the culture points will go up. Sometimes you'll have these goals of getting culture points. So having those extra people is great, but you also do need specific people. So take pictures, see who's there, and once you go find them, you'll need to perform some kind of little thing for them. It's never too difficult. One person wants you to get them some money, one person wants you to take a picture of the moon, one person wants you to take a picture of a flower out in a dungeon, which can just be any flower. I actually used the flower the rainbow butterfly was at. So once I get these people, I've also got one other thing to worry about. This is Balance Valley. It literally means to balance building the town. You're building these towns on these pillars that are in Balance Valley, and you've got to keep them even in weight. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the 4 pillars. The pillars are connected by 2s. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I believe, are the ones that are connected. And when you put stuff on them, they'll become out of balance with each other. You just need to put trees or a house or a church or this here, and you can pick anything up at any time and move it somewhere else, so you can always find a way to balance it. Otherwise, the future won't work. But it really wasn't hard. The balancing part was actually fairly easy and never made it so difficult I couldn't balance for the future. So it was simple. I put people in houses, put some trees down, and I was done. I head to the future and find the chef who says, hey, I can make that miracle dish for you, but I need a flower that, as far as we know, is extinct. And it used to be down in these valleys a long time ago. Well, lucky for us, we came from the past. So we go back to the dungeon, and now that we know we need something, we go find it in the dungeon itself. Something pretty cool happened during Balance Valley in the dungeons during my stream. Someone came in and said that they were a speedrunner, and they were learning to be a speedrunner, and they told me about this cool trick that any casual player can do, which is called L canceling, and it's very simple. The L1 button readies your character's secondary weapon. When you do this, it will stop everything that you are doing during a swing. So if you were swinging your weapon and you press L, you immediately stop the second you press it. And then if you let go and then start attacking again, you can start a quick quicker combo chain because you do about 4 to 5 to 6 hits in a combo. And that combo then ends in kind of like a flourish, and you can't just continue staggering and knocking enemies down that way. You have to either charge up your weapon or need to do a full new combo. However, with this L canceling, you can do 3 to 4 hits, and before the combo ends, cancel with L1 and then immediately begin attacking again. You attack so quickly, if you do it correctly, you can now stagger any enemy infinitely that can be staggered. And this is extremely helpful because it suddenly makes many different fights in the game a breeze. See, the faster you attack and the quicker you get damage on them and the more you stagger them, the less they do damage to you. So you can just outright bully enemies by walking up and doing this canceling combo before they even get an attack in or able to react in any way. And once you get them staggering, as long as you keep the combo up properly and quickly enough, then you can just keep them staggered forever. In fact, at the end of the game, I use it on like mini bosses and every one of them can be staggered. So I just stagger every one of them and infinitely combo them to death, which is, it's just a cool mechanic. I know it's not intended, but it makes combat extra fun, I'll be honest. So thank you to that dude for coming in and telling me because it made the rest of the game extra fun. This other event happens during Balance Valley as well. A kind of random dungeon near the end of the dungeon line. You suddenly get a cutscene where you go back to Palm Brinks and the mayor is holding a random fishing tournament. And it's a whole thing. Every 10 days, this fishing tournament goes on. You can go and compete, and after the 10 days, a new tournament will start. So you have 10 days to do stuff, and I guess you get a score. I'm not sure, but it's like rotates through the rest of the game. You can just come back and go do a fishing tournament, which is so bizarre. And I never tried it once, and I'm sure it's pretty cool, but I just never tried it. Like, how many things do I need to do in this game? At one point in Balance Valley's dungeon, you see that there is a split. There's actually 2 splits. One of those splits is actually able to be used. Once you go to that exit, you'll see that there's another way to go. And when you do, you get to a special new area. It's only a couple dungeon levels in, but once you get there, there's this big, huge bird, and her nest has this weird looking portal, and it looks kind of like a red or blue portal from the Portal games. And she says, hey, I don't know what this is doing here, but I can't stop it. And something comes out of the portal, and she's worried her babies are gonna get hurt. It's this rock. The rock is literally a golf ball, and here's a new mechanic. You play fucking golf. Hot Shots Golf up in here, man. Seriously, what the fuck is going on? So you've got to knock this ball around just as if you're playing golf. And you can do this in every single dungeon. If you destroy every enemy in a dungeon, you unlock Speda, the golf game. And you can then hit a ball around the dungeon and try and hit it into this portal. You'll get items and you'll get more percentages complete on each of the dungeon levels, although it's something I never really do. I've done it a couple times for fun, but there's no reason to. It's not that helpful, and it's actually pretty difficult because of how the dungeons are built. They have these little spots all over the place where your ball can fall into, and if it falls into, it's pretty much a penalty, like in real golf. It's placed back where it was originally, and you only have so many shots to get it into the portal. Not only this, you can't just hit the ball into the portal. The ball changes between 2 colors, red and blue, every time the ball bounces significantly. It can't be just a small roll or a small bounce. It's gotta be a significant bounce. It will change colors. If it is not the color of the portal, it won't go through. So you've really gotta hit your shots well and bounce it so that it's the same color as the portal. This one's a little easier because you only have a few shots, and you can pretty much retry it as many times as you want to beat this area. But it's really not a good mini game. Maybe some people like it, but there's no reason to add a fucking golfing game into this already just full-on mechanics game. Once we do this, we find the flower growing on the eagle's head or the bird's head, whatever it is. And we take the flower, since we've helped the bird, and we go get the miracle dish made. We give it to Lynn, and Lynn actually recovers, although she does have some memory loss, probably because of the shock. That actually makes sense. And when we talk to her for a little bit, she does start to recall some of her memories. Obviously very traumatic for her. And so she looks back at this guy who died, and she says it's her master. He is a sage, or he's at least trying to be a sage. He's such a powerful magician, she believes that he can be. So he is teaching her how to also be a powerful magician. Now the problem is what do we do? Because, well, this guy is actually really important. We decide to just complete the area so that we can figure out what to do, and when we get to a lighthouse, the place that Crest, or this magician that was her master, was killed, it says, man, maybe if there's a way you could find a way into the past, you could go back and save him. And, well, we already traveled to the future and the past, so might as well travel to the past and save this guy. And it says there's actually a shop in the future that might have an artifact that could help you get to the past, which is just another excuse for you to go back and build everything all the way up so that the future holds the key to what you need. We do just that. We get the artifact after building everything up and finishing the dungeon and come back back, and we're able to go to the past and see what happens to Master Crest. We see them at the lighthouse, and there's a moon crystal in the lighthouse that is apparently very powerful and could one day be used against Master Griffin himself. So he sends some dudes to go take care of it and destroy it. This is where he died with Lynn, and she's all upset. So we're watching this unfold, and Lynn from the past here is talking to him, and they get attacked by this airship. We now have a boss battle. The boss battle is Monica jumping on the ship that has come to destroy the moon crystal. We fight one of Emperor Griffin's lackeys, and she has like a personal vendetta because this is the guy who actually killed her father at the very beginning of the game. So she starts beating his ass, and she actually wins. And on the opposite end, while Crest and Lynn are both passed out, Max goes in and fights sentient fires that are coming after them while they're passed out on the ground. I'm not really sure, but that's the other part of the boss battle. It will randomly jump between Monica and Max, and you've got to continue fighting whatever it is you're fighting. It's really not too difficult, and once you're done, you actually find out that the master is going to die no matter what you do, and the guy in the ship escapes, which sucks. Lynn realizes there's no way to actually save Master Crest, so she decides, well, I'm going to take up his mantle. He told me that I'm powerful enough to become the next sage, so I might as well try. She names herself Crest after him, and when we go to the future after all this is done, we find that she is Master Crest herself. She's the sage who's going to tell us about Emperor Griffin. She's so powerful now that she can see all the way into the past. And she says, hey, Emperor Griffin, yo, that dude's so far back in the past, you're not going to be able to get there very easy. You're going to have to find some super special way to do it. This prompts us to head to the next area where we're supposed to build up so that the future contains the most updated and technological lab ever made, because they will probably have a way to travel that far back in the past to fight Emperor Griffin. In Venicio, we arrive, and it's pretty much a seaside area. There's a small beach and a bunch of water, and we go into this cave at the very beginning of the area, and we find a small bunny taking care of this large Nessie-like creature. I mean, it looks like the Loch Ness Monster, so it's gotta have been labeled after it, I guess. Its name is Shingala, and this little bunny is looking after it because it's been lost. It's also got a big gash on its neck, and he needs to go find some medicine for it. Well, he says, hey, can you guys watch this thing while I go grab some medicine? Well, of course, things go wrong, and the thing loses its mind and runs out of the cave. Now we've got to go through the dungeon and track it down so we can help this little dude. The dungeons here are pretty cool. We walk through a bunch of waterlogged caves and sometimes come out onto a beachy area. And it's got some difficult enemies. At this point, we are starting to spectrumize our items quite often and make sure that we are upgrading our weapons frequently, because at this point, enemies are getting more tough. Upon reaching the about middle of the dungeon yet again, we find Shingala, and he still has the gash on his neck, and he's really upset because he also has this weird electronic device on his head. So he's obviously being controlled. Well, we realize the only way to help him is to finally build up the village and go to the future to Luna Labs, the most technologically advanced place in the whole fucking world. And maybe they have a way to help us. Now, building up in Venicio isn't really that difficult. In fact, the kind of cool mechanic here is you don't have a lot of area to build on land. You have to build these piers, and once you build the piers, they pretty much make up the majority of the base of the village. But there's nothing else after that. The Balance Valley had these balancing acts were on these pillars, which was kind of cool, I guess. It wasn't hard, but at least it kept things interesting. This one is literally build a base floor and then just build whatever you want on top of it. Instead, they start to do a lot more specifics. So when you are building houses, you have to place the houses near a boat. All the houses need to be near a boat in some way. Then some of the houses have to be certain colors. You actually can get paint and color them. At first, it seems like this gives you some customization, but why the fuck would I want to start coloring all the houses when you have a very few amount of houses you can place and very few reasons to actually want to build this place to look cool? Because most of the time, you're not going to spend your time here. You build this stuff to go to the future because the future's way better. We finally get to Luna Labs, and we learn another new fucking mechanic, and this is just absurd at this point, man. I don't understand. So this guy in Luna Labs says, yeah, I actually have a way to knock that electronic device off Shingala's head. Have it eat this worm that is electrified. It will shock him, and the device will come off, which sounds suspicious. I have a gun. Can't I just shoot the device? Anyway, he says you've got to give it this worm. But the characters say, he doesn't eat worms, he eats fish. So the guy goes, oh, well then just catch a fish and feed it this worm, and then feed Shingala the fish. And it's like, the same thing, right? Well, at first it does seem like that, but you can't just fucking catch a fish. No, you have to figure out how to build an aquarium by inventing it. You need to take the right pictures, invent the aquarium, build the aquarium with stuff, catch a fish, put the fish in the aquarium, then feed the fish the worm. Then you can take the fish to Shingala. However, the aquarium is its own fucking thing, and you can have fish in there, you can feed them, you can change the environment. I don't understand anything about the aquarium past at this point, because why the fuck would I want to spend my time doing this? I already have golf, I have regular fishing, I have the dungeons, I have upgraded my weapons, I have the ride pod, I have monster transforming. I don't want anything else to do. We get the fish with the worm inside of it, feed it to Shingala during a boss battle where we can't hurt it, we just need to feed it the fish when it opens its mouth. And then we save its life. Yay! The problem is that we're still pretty confused about what to do about this gash on its neck. The medicine the bunny kid gives it doesn't work. So now we decide we need to be able to talk to the Shingala, or the whatever they're called, the sea dragons. But we can't talk to this one because apparently Shingala's a baby. But we need to go and build another lab in Luna Labs for the future. Find out if someone has a way to talk to these dragons, and then progress through the dungeon to find an elder dragon to talk to who can actually talk to us. And that's exactly what we do. We find a device that lets us talk to them, and we go through the rest of the dungeon and get to these elder dragons to hopefully figure out a way to save Shingala. And we do. It says, hey, that's actually one of our young from our pack that got lost. We will gladly help you because you seem nice and we want our baby to live. They give us a secret dragon remedy. We take it back to the baby and he heals very, very quickly, which is great. So then we go back into the dungeon and it's last boss time. This is a weird one. This is not a normal fight. The bad guys have found the sea dragons, and this very weird looking guy with a guitar, I'm not really sure what he's supposed to look like, has put the devices on all of the sea dragons' heads. So now he controls all of them, and he traps you in the middle of like this circle of them, so you can't leave. But he gives you enough room to like get away from attacks. I'm not sure why he's giving us this room, but he does. And if you just block, these guys bring their head down to attack, and when they do, if you hit them one time, their head goes up in pain. Of course, you're smashing them in the face. When you do that, their head flips up, and if you watch the top of the screen, you can see the bad guy rotating in a circle around all of this. And the goal is to hit the sea dragons on the head and make them smash into the guy's floating vehicle. It is a really weird fight, and it doesn't quite make sense as to why it's happening. But this is what happens. And when we beat it, this bad guy rolls around on the ground for a moment and then gets licked on the face by the sea dragons, as if they forgive him, I guess? I don't know. He seems like not a great person, but it ends up actually being okay. So after this battle, we go back and the sea dragons say, hey, we're gonna leave. We're also gonna take Shingala, the baby that you saved. We're gonna take the baby back. So bye, bunny kid who just got attached to this living big old creature you saved. And so that's it. They have to leave. And then you get to build up the rest of the city and go back to the Luna Lab. Things get really interesting. So first, that bad guy we just fought, his grandson later on, because we're in the future, says, well, he changed his ways. He ended up doing what he wanted to do in the first place, which was researching and doing all these special technology things. And that's how I'm here today and can tell you all about these crazy future things and where exactly Emperor Griffin is. After this, we actually get to meet Max's mom, someone I haven't really talked about a lot except for the very beginning when I called her a deadbeat. I mean, she has been missing and no one knows. I mean, Max doesn't know. Other people, his dad knows exactly where she fucking is because of this crazy story she tells. First of all, we finally see Max's mom just out of nowhere and she's like, oh yeah, I guess I'll explain. And she really does right there explain exactly what's happening. She says that Emperor Griffin is searching for these 3 stones. We have the red one, Monica has the blue one, and there's a yellow one. And they believed Emperor Griffin to have the yellow one. He was trying to search for all 3 stones together because just like the Triforce pieces, if they come together, you get super powerful. I mean, you don't get to make a wish, you just become super powerful. See, apparently the stones choose themselves who gets to have them. So the stone chose Emperor Griffin. Another stone, the blue one, chose Monica's dad originally. I believe that's who it originally chose until he passed it on to her, which is something that it can do if the stone wants it. Then Max's dad was the other person who got the stone. They are in different timelines, and that's just how things are gonna be. But because Max's mom knew from the future who had the stone, she came back to protect it. That way Griffin couldn't get to it. She felt the blue one was safe because it was with a king and with an army protecting him. So she came back to this one specifically, and she watched Gerald, Max's dad, from afar, and eventually got closer to him, I guess, and they fell in love, and then they had Max. And so for a little while, she stayed there with them. But then when he was 5 years old, she just fucking left back to the future. And her excuse is that she can't live in that time. And I'm just a little confused. What do you mean you can't live in the past for long? It was 5 fucking years, and actually that's more because you left when he was 5. So let's say she lived in the past and mothered a child for 6 years, and then suddenly, oh wait, I can't actually be here that long. Well, she also uses the excuse that there's a war going on. However, this war is in the future, okay? This war is in the future. She's going to go back to a fixed point in the future, as far as I can tell, because that's what always fucking happens. We choose a fucking point to go back at. I mean, we literally went back and tried to save someone's life. So I assume that you could probably just go right back to where you were because that's what we do. So why is she worried about the war going on? She could literally have stayed and mothered her child, and then something could have been better than her leaving it when I was 5 and no one telling me anything, and then her just popping up and being like, no, I can't come back with you. So this is either flimsy writing, or we're supposed to read into the fact that she really isn't a great mother and should probably not have had a child at this point. I mean, she's literally fighting a war to save the entire world. Anyway, we all decide that before we can actually go back to the past to fight Emperor Griffin, we probably need something to fight him with. And we realize that there's this thing in the future we end up building as long as things in the past go right, called Pasnos. Apparently an entire large flying weapon that can fight against Emperor Griffin, or it actually did in the future, or was supposed to, whatever. We're gonna go to this new place and we're gonna build up and we're gonna find a way to rebuild Pasnos before we go back in time. We leave to Mount Gundor to rebuild Pasnos. And when we get there, the whole area is covered with ash and it's raining and it's really, really hot. So the game says I can't build anything that would be succumb to heat too easily. Like plants, you can't put plants, you can't put wooden houses, you have to build brick and metal or iron things, or they won't survive. Obviously we have nothing to build with yet, so we gotta start in the dungeon. Now one of the first things I do is I build a machine gun for the ride pod. At this point I had been using the very easy stock missile weapon, which wasn't anything to write home about. It worked fine and it was great, and it homed in on enemies kind of. But the machine gun is kind of where things take off. I realized that the ride pod is way stronger than you would imagine. The machine guns are very fast and just rip through enemies. Now if they're flying, you can't hit them, so generally you want to use something like a missile weapon or a laser weapon from the ride pod to hit them. Or you can just use Max or Monica to take care of them, as none of the flying enemies are ever the big variety or the big category where the ride pod would do more damage to them and is worth more using. All the flying enemies are usually easy enough for Max or Monica to kill. So you can kind of just ride in the ride pod, shoot things to death, get out and give either Max or Monica the XP, and then get back in the ride pod and just go around and blast everything to death. You really can't lose that way. One last little bit is that all of the weapons in the game, including your future ride pod, will have a durability. And that means every time you swing or fire, then you'll have to lose some durability. And to repair it, you actually have different repair powders. The repair powders are separate for the secondary weapons on each character, but the same for the main weapon on all characters. Repair powder repairs the main weapon for Max, Monica, and the ride pod. And the armband powder repairs the armband for Monica, and the gun repairs the guns for Max. So you have to buy a couple specific kinds. And honestly, at the beginning of the game is the only time it was ever really a problem. And it wasn't even really a problem ever. There's only a couple times where I noticed, it would be helpful to have some repair powder. But most of the time, if you wait until the durability of a weapon gets all the way to 1 or 0, then use a repair powder to repair it to full, you'll get the full effect of the weapon. And most of the time, I never dropped below that without repair powder to use. You can also find ways inside of a dungeon to repair them too. There's the Happy Clown Present Time chest that has a clown that has a present. Sometimes you can get repair powder. You can also get the question mark in a dungeon, the little question mark yellow spot that will give you an angel coin or a devil coin. The angel coin gives you things like increases to some of your experience, health, and then you can also get your weapons repaired. So that's another way to do it. And you can also just pick up repair powder from chests and from enemies. So it's possible to get those things to help your character. I make my way through many dungeon floors, gathering Geostones and getting new parts to make for the future to be fixed. And in this one, there aren't as many story beats because the whole point is that you build 100% of the future. Up until this point, you haven't had to complete an area or a town 100% of the way. This time, however, you do. You must complete it because Pasnos is at the very end of the analysis sheet and shows that you need everything else to be made. So the whole point is that you're building this 3-tiered workshop. And when you build the elevators, you do eventually get to start getting some story beats and understand what's going on. To do this though, you need to do something special when you're in the ash-filled city that you're building in. Not only do you have to build with only iron, but there is one requirement that was kind of weird. It said you need to build a house 3 blocks high. That means you need to stack something 3 high and then put a house on it. I thought, well, it's gotta be these blocks right here. So I spent quite some time trying to set up a house on top of blocks, building more and more blocks, thinking I need more space, and it just never worked out until eventually I thought, man, I don't understand. How am I supposed to stack these blocks up? It literally says 3 blocks high. Well, I look online and you don't have to use blocks. Apparently there are these stands that will hold a house. boss. It's this big circular stand. You can somehow stack them up, and that counts as 3 blocks high. It's not nearly as many as the 3 block items I can make, so it was a little confusing, and I'm not sure why they worded it that way, and they didn't even tell you that there was an ability to build things up higher, because the one requirement is right here and never again. So this is the one time you'll have to use it. Once you restore enough of the workshop, you go there and find out that the only way to restore the rest of it is to destroy this device called the Fire Squall. It's what was being used to destroy the factory in the first place. So if we can stop it, we can finish building the Pasnos. So the next thing we do is we take a timed explosive over to the Fire Squall, where we're then attacked by Gaspard, the guy who we fought earlier when we were saving Lynn and her friend Crest the Sage. This time he's here to stop us from blowing up the Fire Squall in his ship called the Death Ark. I just didn't realize it was called the Death Ark. Well, this guy doesn't cause any death at all because we just kick his ass. You actually run around the outer edge of what I believe to be a volcano where the Fire Squall is, and you fire your weapon. Now, you gotta make sure you have a weapon that will reach. My machine guns won't reach, my lasers won't quite reach, but my missiles do. And it is a little bit of a slow process. Luckily, I brought enough repair powder, but by this point, you might want to have a long-range weapon for the ride pod that's pretty strong. I didn't upgrade the missiles, so it would have been much quicker battle for me. Anyway, after I blow up his ship, Monica just jumps on and decides to fight him hand to hand, but our arc goes into the volcano, Monica included. So now we've got to climb down and save her, and we have to do another dungeon or so by ourselves so that we can get down to her to save her. I finally get to the next boss arena, but before I go in, I go back and rebuild more of the city to get to pretty much the end, or at least as far as I can go, which allows me to talk to someone new. This guy named Galen, a hunting horn main. He actually already knows our mom, so he does a little flirting with us, and then he eventually tells us the only way to save Monica all the way down in the volcano she fell in is to take this horn and blow it, which will help you get through some of the lava. I made the decision to figure out how I could change the movement of my ride pod because I saw something about there being a bike or some kind of bike parts. Well, I do figure out how to build them, and then when I invent them and build them, I now have a set of wheels on my ride pod, and you can move very fast. This is actually my preferred method of movement through dungeons after this. It's hard to control, it's very hard to control, but once you get used to it, you can move so quickly that you can just switch to the ride pod and go through large swaths of an empty dungeon. Let's say if you are trying to find the key and the door is way far on the other side of the dungeon, once you get it, you can get in the ride pod and just fly right over there. But you can also use it to just outgun enemies. With the machine guns and the wheels, I can spin in circles around an enemy so fast and fire so fast that no one can hit me. I use it on the boss. Once we get a little further in and we hit the boss room, we go to save Monica by fighting Gaspard. And we fight him and he's pretty much just like he was before. He's a little bit stronger. But with just Max, I beat him not too bad. And then he kind of has a change of heart. We talk to him about us saving the world and all these things that we're doing. And he's like, hey, here's my sob story about how I was younger and my mom died and he was angry. And so Emperor Griffin picked him up and was like, yeah, you can help me because you're an angry person. So he suddenly has a complete change of heart from Yu-Gi-Oh! And everything is fine now. He's like, I understand. I'm going to let you do your journey. I'm going to go do my own journey. But right as he's about to leave, Emperor Griffin takes over his mind and turns him into a big demon. Now the fights I use the bike here, I actually lost a little bit of footage of fighting him as the demon. My stream just stopped suddenly, but you can see me using the ride pod and the wheels and the Gatling gun against just the human version. It is the same on the demon version. I just run around and, I mean, it's circle strafing, but to an extreme degree where you lock on with machine guns and just tool around in a fucking bike and destroy them. After we beat Gaspard and save Monica, we come back and the Pasnos is finally finished being built. We are ready to fight Emperor Griffin, but first, we're also being attacked by a bunch of monsters. They're all just these golems from a dungeon, and apparently they're enormous. I don't understand this part of the game, really, because the way that this is set up, it feels weird. Like, these just seem like regular dungeon enemies, but then we blast them down with the Pasnos, and they are extra big, but are they supposed to be? Are they actually small? Are they really that big of a threat? I mean, we have a big flying city now. Do we even have to destroy them? Because we're just going to fly away? I don't know. It doesn't matter. In the end, we are ready to fight Emperor Griffin. However, no one thought about this, I guess. We kind of did. And they're like, oh, yeah, Emperor Griffin is in the past and we are in the future. How do we take this thing to fight him? Well, there's actually possibly a way. What we do is we go back to Luna Labs and talk to some of the people there, and they make us a future and past time travel
train. So we now have this enormous fucking train, you know, to fly around in and just go to whatever time we want, which does make the game moving around a little easier. It's not that much easier, but sure, it helps with us moving around easier. Our goal is to go to a different time and find Emperor Griffin and try and stop him right now. But we know that that's probably not going to work. And we actually do just that. We go back to the castle where Emperor Griffin is at right now. We walk in and he's just this little bunny and he starts attacking us, and boy does he fucking hurt when he attacks us. He's a little bit of a difficult fight, but when we beat him, he falls down on the ground and we stupidly walk over to him. Like he's this super powerful dude. Why are we walking over to what we assume is his corpse? No, we walk over and he just reaches up and snatches the 2 stones off of us. Like, what the fuck, guys? You literally doomed the world. What the fuck is going on? So then he uses them to transform into Big Emperor Griffin. Now, when he's Small Emperor Griffin, he is Phil from Rugrats. Phil and Lil, the voice actor from Rugrats. Fucking Phil and Lil. And then when he transforms into Big Emperor Griffin, he's Luke Skywalker, who is Mark Hamill, which is great. Okay, so some interesting voice actors in this game. I mean, on top of the fact that your main character, Max, is literally Lloyd from Tales of Symphonia and Robin from Teen Titans. He's a lot of voices. Now that he's Big Emperor Griffin, he's even more powerful, and he pulls the entirety of the castle that we're in up off the ground and into the air. We escape just barely, and we get back in the train and we're like, well, what the shit do we do? Well, we find this little area where you're supposed to put 4 crystals in. You're able to open up like this space-time anomaly type thing. So the idea that we're supposed to be doing is we're supposed to get these 4 crystals, bring them here, and we're going to make both the past and the future exist at the same time, so that in this bubble, we can have both Emperor Griffin and the Pasnos that we just built and have them fight and try and see if we can get a leg up that way. It seems like a lot of work to get that thing to fight it. And honestly, I don't even know if it helps in the end, but that's what we're doing. Now, here's how getting the crystals works, because there's not a new dungeon right here right now. The thing is, we get a new key. It's the star key. And what you can do is go back to all the dungeons you've been to before. And in each of those dungeons, there's always one branching path that has a door that is blocked by this mysterious light. It's like this moon area, and it says you can't access this right now. Well, now you can. Every dungeon has one of these branching paths. You go through the dungeon again, get the key, and find the new door. Go down that door and you have 4 dungeon levels and then a mini boss that is guarding the crystal. There's 4 mini bosses in total and 4 crystals. You've got to go back to 4 dungeons and just do them over a little bit again, which at first is fine, I guess. It's not terrible. All the new areas, there's new enemies in each of the areas. The mini boss is not necessarily one you've seen before. So the stuff is new, but you do have to backtrack through. So you get to re-experience some of the dungeon again. And it's fine. At this point, I'm leveling up my weapons really high. The enemies in these areas are actually counting for my weapons to be upgraded, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And we are driving the story forward. It just feels a little weird we came back. Okay, so how is building weapons up at this point? Because it's become a little bit more complex. See, there is a big problem with building your weapons up. It's not just easy to do. You've got to level up certain stats on the weapons, and the next step up that you have is always in question marks. The only real information about this new weapon are the stats that you leveled up to get to it. That means that weapon's going to have those stats be its main thing. So if you need more lightning damage or more exorcism or more smash or more scale, going that route, if there's multiple options, is the way that you kind of want to do. The problem is you don't see the weapon name and you don't get to know anything about its combo or attack speed. And I believe those 3 things are really helpful. See, at this point, there are many resources online. You can go look up these weapons, but why would you keep some information from the player, especially ones where you have options? I mean, there's very little to go on. Combos, the attack speed, and what the weapon's name is and what you're going for is really important, because at some point you do get locked out of seeing weapons until you go back and buy maybe a lower level weapon and re-upgrade it and build it up, or invent your own weapons at different areas of the build-up tree. But you don't have any of these set out for you to see. So you're always going in with a little bit of mystery. And at first it seems okay. You're like, oh yeah, it's a mystery, like what will happen? But you'll never get a chance to make a good choice. It's always just an educated guess. Like, yeah, this lightning damage will be great, but is the combo slower? Is the type of weapon I'm about to make faster? Or does it have a longer combo? Is it even worth doing? Do I need to go to a different route? And this is what happens with Max. I do get a choice between using a wrench or a hammer. the hammer is slower, more strong, or the wrench is speedier and less strong. But with Monica, it's really hard to tell. She has several different swords, all with different combos and slightly different attack speeds. So I'm never sure what I'm about to get. Even looking online, it's not readily apparent. So I really don't like that they keep this a mystery from the player. It's still fun because you get to choose all these things and level up the stats, but it could have been dumbed down a little more and more information given to the player so it felt better as you level these weapons up, because it is 100% necessary so that you can deal enough damage to kill them, because at this point you're just blocking and hoping for the best. I also want to state that at this point I've almost given up entirely on their secondary weapons. They do help in some situations, but since I learned L canceling and I've gotten their main weapons so high in damage, and I mostly use the ride pod to just tear through dungeons and destroy everyone in seconds, it's not really necessary. I can spend all my time working on just their main weapons, and their secondary weapons, I never really get very far. I never get to see cool things about them, and I use them a few more times near the end of the game, but it wasn't ever that big of a deal. I really liked the L canceling and the using their main weapons over doing anything with their secondary, although I see that sometimes those secondary weapons are really good, so I wouldn't sleep on them, but they were never useful for me. The only new thing here are the 4 mini bosses guarding all 4 gems, and they're really easy now that I have the bike and the minigun upgrades. I mean, I just make circles around them and destroy their asses. And once I get the gems, I bring them back to the shrine, where we can then combine the past and the future into the present so that we may fight. So the Pasnos is flying up in the sky, and Griffin's little island is floating up there now, and they can see each other. So the Pasnos begins firing. However, it's just not strong enough, and so they decide in desperation to transform the Pasnos into a robot. I mean, it's like a transformer. And the guy who is, Gellin doesn't know that it can do that, but my mom does. And he was like, well, from the planning stages, and she goes, well, there's even things you don't know. And it's like, bro, what the how would you not know this? Whatever. They turn into a robot, and instead of doing something meaningful, like picking up the island that Griffin is floating on and throwing it into outer space, as I don't see how you couldn't. I mean, just lift him up, just keep going up, don't let him stop. I mean, he's got to breathe air too, I think. Just they throw him on the ground so we can get to him easier. I don't know. They transform into a robot to throw an island on the ground. I'm not really sure why. Chapter 7, our final chapter, takes place right on this island, and we can travel to and from it with the train, back and forth everywhere we need to go to get all the stuff we need. We have a huge dungeon to explore, and the only thing we need to do is build up a garden. This is actually extremely time consuming, because you can't just build it up for fun. The point of this garden is to bring Emperor Griffin's mind back to when he was younger, or at least a long time ago, when this woman was taking care of him. And I'm not really sure exactly why he's here. I think he was maybe an orphan, maybe he was left behind, but she saw him in the garden of this castle that she's in. She was maybe some kind of princess, and so she took him in and she kept him there, and they had a great time together until humans killed her, so he got upset at humans. And this is actually why he ended up trying to find these 3 stones and destroy everything. I mean, literally, he's just trying to destroy everything. He didn't care about shit. So you've got to rebuild this garden, and as you go through the dungeon is pretty difficult. This is the last dungeon we have to do. You're going to be finding geostones all over the place, and you pretty much have to go right up until the last area to finally get the last amount of stuff you need. You need absolutely 100% of this area built, and it has to be in the correct way. There are 6 or 7 or 8 pictures inside of the castle when you walk in. You have to look at those pictures and see how the garden was built, and you also get to see a couple of flashbacks. These will help you kind of position where things go. You're going to have to count to see how many things you need. You need to see exactly where they go. You have to do it pretty exact, so don't try and finagle your way through it. You have to make it as exact as possible. For a while, it took me a bit to figure out what it was I was doing wrong, and it took a good hour and a half of building and putting things together to finally get it. And that's it. That's the only thing you do in this place. You don't actually go to the future or the past right now. You're just building this garden until you fill out the analysis page. The dungeon is, like I said, the hardest dungeon we've been in so far, and there are so many dungeon paths. At this point in the game, I'm almost to the very last weapons in each of my character's upgrade paths. And at this point, I've also looked online to choose which ones I want, because I don't have any options really. It's just question mark, or this question mark. I wanted to have at least some idea of what I was getting myself into. So for Monica, I was going after the game's signature weapon, the Dark Cloud. And for Max, I was going for the very last hammer you could get, because I had kind of stuck with the hammer, and it's not the greatest all the
time, honestly, I would have rather had faster attack speed. I should have gone with the wrench, but it was serviceable, it was fine, and I mostly used Monica anyway, so it really wasn't a big deal. After I upgraded their weapons just about as far as I could go, I just plowed my way through this dungeon, destroying as many things as I possibly could, and eventually making some new weapons and stuff for the ride pod that did a lot of damage, and just biking my way through. It really wasn't too bad, because you just kind of do it all in one go. It's not like before where you're going back and forth between all of these different things. Story beats, dungeon, building, new mechanics. Story beat, dungeon, building, new mechanic. It's just go through the dungeon, then build, then you're to the last area. And the last area isn't too difficult. In fact, it's pretty easy if you've gotten some stronger weapons. So you don't even have to have the best weapon in the game. With Monica, I was able to stagger each of the mini bosses leading up to Emperor Griffin. And once I beat them, that was it. I fought Emperor Griffin. They weren't really that hard. Like I said, I just went behind them and started the L canceling combo. They would get staggered and I'd do it over and over and over until they were dead. So first in this boss battle, you fight Emperor Griffin in about 2 or 3 different forms. And he does get a little tougher each time, but I have the ride pod on wheels, so it doesn't matter that much. Then we fight those mini bosses I talked about, and then we reach the real end boss, the evil controlling Emperor Griffin. See, this is like some evil incarnate. So he had control over him, and Emperor Griffin actually has something else to do. He just needs to get this evil out of him. So as we fight this evil guy, he actually switches back and forth between 2 forms in the middle of battle, red and blue. And if you can imagine, both Monica and Max have a red and blue stone. So you have to switch to the character whose stone color he is. So blue for Monica and red for Max. This means that you switch to them and anything you have does a good amount of damage. And he does a lot himself. He's pretty tough to combo. He likes to fly around in the air, and he also doesn't give you much choice between L canceling. Honestly, it never really worked for me. I mean, he doesn't get staggered. He's the last boss. So as I move through, the game also pulls a Majora's Mask and has the moon hurtling towards the earth. This is how the evil is going to destroy everyone. And you have 5 minutes until it does. So during this boss battle, you can't fuck around. You've got to deal damage. That means you got to pay attention to when he's turning into the other color, switch to that character, and you do need to use their secondary. If my secondaries were a little stronger, it would have been easier, but it still was fine. It worked well, and I was able to beat him in a timely manner. I had a couple minutes left, and that's it. That's the last boss. That's the end of the game. Once you beat him, you get to see the rest of the story play out. You get to see Emperor Griffin sacrifice himself to stop the moon, as even though you defeated the evil guy, the moon's still coming. Then you get to see everyone say their goodbyes because, well, everyone's from a different time. I mean, literally everyone is. So Max goes home by himself, apparently with his dad, because his dad's back in the present anyway. And that's it. The game ends. I mean, you know, you did save the world. No one really knows exactly what happened, and you are already rich, so it doesn't matter how popular you are or how famous you are for saving the world. You've got shit tons of money. And that's not the end of the game, though. There is credits here. Don't worry. I did see credits, but there is one more chapter, and I don't know anything about it. Apparently, it's a lot more building and maybe some dungeon crawling, but mostly building. This is probably just a story wrap-up, maybe some extras, maybe you get to see Monica and your mom again, but who knows, because I did not play that part. It was already a long-ass game, a little over 40 hours it took me to beat this, and this video is by far one of my longest videos to date because of how many mechanics and things are going on in this game. I didn't even explain all the little intricate things about the story or each of the enemies in the dungeons and anything else in the game. There's still other things that are just smaller. I also don't want to spoil everything because I already have spoiled a lot. So if you want to play this game, I absolutely recommend you do. It is very fun. There's a lot to do, and if you're anyone who plays a game on a PS2, you'll find something fun to do in this game. Even if it is the golf or the aquarium or fishing or the fishing tournaments or building up the towns in a way you want to, because hey, you could probably figure out a way to do that. It's just not super intuitive right at first. But this game has anything you want. You can grind, you can get the high-end weapons, you can get great things, you can learn all the inventions, you can get all the characters into all the towns and get all these cool abilities. There's a lot to do, and while it is a jack of all trades, at least the battling, the fighting, is done really well. I don't like the weapon upgrade system that much. The spectrumizing is fine, but the mysterious question marks are not. I want more information about what I'm about to do, because if I have no idea, why would I want to do it? I mean, just take a risk and jump into it? If I have multiple options, I don't want to pick the thing I don't want. You know, if there's 3 things there and I go, oh, I don't want this one, that's just not me. Well, I can't here. You just have to take a risk, because as you spectrumize and add on to weapons, you can't take it back. back. The only way to get points to spectrumize is to level a weapon up. Every time you level a weapon up, you get points to spectrumize it, but you only have so many, so you have to level the weapon up over and over and over to eventually finally get enough points to spectrumize it. So it's just crazy that with how little you have to go back to fix things, you can't just know what you're about to get. The combat, though, is very fun. You have so much agency. I felt great running around and fighting things, and when I got hit, it was really my fault. And with L canceling, man, it just made it so much fun because, yeah, now you can mess up big time, or you can really, really get some awesome combos and fighting enemies in. You can go entire dungeons without getting hit, and you can also use the ride pod, your little mech suit. And I didn't even explore the monster transformations with Monica. I hear they aren't that great, but maybe you find a way to use them to your liking. There are lots of things in this game about the battle system that are great, but it is surrounded by tons of other dense mechanics and content. So if you like this sort of thing, you can ignore some of these things and just kind of fly through the game. You can even take some of my tips and use that to beat the game yourself. But in the end, it is a recommended game, and probably I'd say 7.5 out of 10. I say it's a solid game with too many mechanics. And that is it, everyone. Like I said, I saw credits. Game number 45 complete on this long ass fucking video. I don't know how else to say this, but I thought this video was gonna be 25 to 40 minutes. It's not. It's almost double that length, man. Actually, it is double that length. Christ almighty. I'm so sorry, everyone. But this game was just dense, and I did enjoy it. And thank you, everyone who was there for the stream. That was so much fun. Everyone, there was a speedrunner who came in. There were new people who came in. Darkblade helped with a lot of different things in the game and brought up like guides and helped me on my way through. Everyone was great, and it was just a fun time. And we're really moving through the games now. And the next game I worked on was Hurdy-Gurdy, so that'll be coming out soon. The next games I'm also playing are all these games in a row. I'm playing 13, Resident Evil Outbreak File 2, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, and then the 50th game will be San Andreas. That way we can have a nice little, in the middle, wonderful game everyone likes. That might get some interest, who knows? But thank you, everyone. Every single person here, thank you so much. And especially the patron members, thank you guys so much. I'll mention them one more time. I put them at the beginning of the video, but I'll say it again. Thank you so much. The next game, Hurdy-Gurdy, was actually recommended by Delaney, and it's a great game. It's such a weird game, and I can't wait to do the video on it because it's going to be super cool. It's janky. It's just awesome. Okay, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to everyone later.